Have you ever wondered why you always feel alone in the middle of so many people? Why those who claim to support you are the first to abandon you when you decide to follow your own path? Nietzsche had a brutal answer for this. The truth is that most people live as part of a herd. They follow rules they've never questioned, repeat ideas they've never thought through, and attack anyone who dares to be different. It's not personal against you, it's survival instinct. And today, you're going to understand why the herd will always betray those who dare to be authentic. Get ready for a journey that will change how you see the world and the people around you. Nietzsche observes something that few dare to admit. Most of humanity lives automatically, following established patterns without ever questioning their origin or purpose. These people form what he called the herd, a mass of individuals who find security in uniformity and conformity. The herd isn't just a group of people who think alike. It's a powerful psychological force that shapes behaviors, defines values, and establishes limits for what's considered normal or acceptable. When you're part of the herd, your choices aren't really yours. They're products of an invisible collective pressure that constantly acts on your mind. Living as part of the masses means accepting ready-made truths without investigation. It means repeating opinions that others formed, following traditions that might not even make sense anymore, and staying within imaginary lines that define what's right to do. The herd offers a sense of belonging, but charges a high price: your individuality. This dynamic manifests in every aspect of life. At work, people repeat outdated strategies because that's how it's always been done. In relationships, they follow romantic scripts they learned from movies. In politics, they defend ideas they've never studied deeply. The herd creates a collective comfort zone where no one needs to think much, but everyone needs to follow the unwritten rules. The problem arises when someone decides to question these rules. When a person starts thinking for themselves, developing their own ideas, or following a different path from what's established, they automatically become a threat to the herd's stability. And that's when the betrayal begins. Nietzsche realized that the herd develops a specific morality, a morality that favors the weak and punishes the strong. This morality doesn't come from wisdom or justice, but from the need for self-preservation. People who feel inadequate or incapable of creating their own values create rules that limit everyone to their level. Schopenhauer, another German philosopher, observed something similar when he wrote about how mediocrity protects itself by attacking excellence. For him, this was part of the most primitive human nature, the impulse to destroy what one cannot understand or achieve. The herd's morality functions as a system of social control. It establishes that humility is better than confidence, that modesty is superior to ambition, that it's better to be equal to everyone than to stand out. These values aren't neutral. They serve a specific purpose, keeping everyone at the same low level. When you accept this morality, you accept a life of planned mediocrity. You learn to distrust your own instincts, to diminish your dreams so you don't think too highly of yourself, and to avoid risks that could take you beyond the collective comfort zone. The herd sells this limitation as virtue. This morality of the weak disguises itself as kindness and altruism, but it's actually a sophisticated form of sabotage. It teaches that wanting more from life is greed, that having confidence in yourself is arrogance, and that thinking differently is dangerous. This way, it keeps everyone trapped in an invisible prison made of good intentions. The result is a society where the exception is seen as a problem and the rule is treated as virtue, where those who dare to dream big are called dreamers and those who accept little are called realists. The herd has transformed resignation into wisdom and ambition into a flaw. But there's a type of person who represents the complete opposite of this morality: the free spirit. Nietzsche used this term to describe individuals who can think beyond the limitations imposed by the herd, who create their own values and follow their own paths, regardless of social approval. The free spirit isn't just someone rebellious or different. They're a person who has developed the ability to question everything, including their own beliefs. They don't accept ready-made truths and aren't satisfied with superficial explanations. More importantly, They don't need the herd's approval to feel valid. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the psychological journey where a person becomes truly themselves instead of being just a reflection of social expectations. For Jung, this was the most important task of human life, but also the loneliest. For the herd, this independence is terrifying. When someone demonstrates that it's possible to live without following established rules, it questions the entire structure on which the herd bases its identity. If one person can be happy and successful being different, that means all the others could do the same, but chose not to. This realization generates a collective existential crisis. The herd realizes, even unconsciously, that their limitations are self-imposed, that their excuses for not seeking more from life are just that, excuses. And instead of using this as inspiration for change, they choose to eliminate the source of this inconvenient revelation. The free spirit becomes a mirror that reflects the unexplored possibilities of each herd member. And mirrors that show uncomfortable truths tend to be broken, not contemplated. That's why, when you start thinking for yourself, the first thing you notice is how this bothers the people around you. They won't say directly that they want you to stop growing, but they'll find subtle ways to express this desire. Think about entrepreneurs who create disruptive companies, like Steve Jobs with Apple or Elon Musk with Tesla. They were ridiculed for years before being recognized. The establishment always resists what's genuinely new. Many people spend years trying to be accepted by the herd. They modify their opinions to fit in, hide their dreams to not seem pretentious, and sacrifice their authenticity in exchange for social approval. Nietzsche observed that this search for belonging is, in fact, a cruel illusion. The herd never truly accepts those who are authentic. It can tolerate small superficial differences, a different haircut, more colorful clothes, a bolder joke. But when someone demonstrates a fundamental difference in values, ambitions, or way of thinking, the herd's tolerance quickly runs out. The acceptance the herd offers is always conditional. You're accepted as long as you don't question the basic rules, as long as you don't stand out too much, as long as you don't make others feel inadequate by your presence. It's an acceptance that requires you to be a diminished version of yourself. Many spend their entire lives in this frustrating dance, revealing pieces of their personality to test the group's reaction, retreating when the response is negative, trying to find the perfect balance between being accepted and being authentic. But this balance, in reality, doesn't exist. The authentic person carries within themselves something the herd cannot accept, living proof that it's possible to live differently. Their existence questions everyone else's choices, even if they never say a word about it. The simple fact that they are who they are is already a silent criticism of voluntary mediocrity. So, the herd develops mechanisms to deal with this threat. They can try to convert the authentic person, pressuring them to be more realistic or think of others. They can try to minimize their achievements, attributing their success to luck or special circumstances. Or they can simply reject them, finding flaws where they once saw qualities. This rejection process isn't a system failure, it's a feature of it. The herd needs to betray those who are different to maintain its own cohesion. Betrayal isn't an accident, it's a structural necessity. Nietzsche understood that this betrayal doesn't happen out of malice or conscious envy, but from a deep biological and psychological necessity. The herd functions like an organism that needs to maintain its homeostasis, its internal balance. Any element that disturbs this balance needs to be eliminated or neutralized. When a person within the group starts to stand out, think differently, or achieve results that others can't, they create a disturbance in the system. The other members start comparing themselves to them, questioning their own choices, and feeling uncomfortable with their own mediocrity. To restore balance, the herd has two options: raise the level of all members, or lower the level of the member who stands out. The first option requires effort, change, and leaving the comfort zone. The second is much easier. Just eliminate or neutralize the disturbing element. This dynamic explains why groups frequently sabotage their own most talented members, why families discourage ambitious children, why co-workers criticize those who try too hard, why communities reject those who think differently. It's not personal, it's systemic. The herd develops social antibodies to deal with anything that threatens its stability. These antibodies include systematic criticism, social isolation, ridicule, and, in extreme cases, direct persecution. The goal isn't to improve the group, but to preserve its uniformity. This need for betrayal manifests in subtle ways in daily life. The friend who always discouraged your plans pulls away when you start realizing them. The family that said they supported your dreams starts criticizing when they become reality. Colleagues who celebrated your small achievements start minimizing the big ones. Look at contemporary artists who are cancelled for ideas ahead of their time, or scientists who were ridiculed for theories that later proved correct. History repeats itself constantly. The herd can only maintain its unity through systematic exclusion of everything that challenges its mediocrity. There's a feeling that feeds this dynamic of betrayal, but is rarely openly admitted: envy. Nietzsche realized that the herd feels secret admiration for those who dare to be different, but this admiration comes accompanied by deep resentment for their own inability to do the same. When you decide to follow your own path, the people around you experience a complex mixture of emotions. Part of them admires your courage and determination. Part of them would like to have the same freedom and authenticity you demonstrate, but a larger part feels threatened and diminished by your choice. This secret admiration manifests at specific moments. When you're not present, people might comment on your courage or achievements with a tone of respect. They might even use you as an example in private conversations. But when you're present, especially in public, the dynamic changes completely. In public, the herd can't show admiration for someone who challenges their rules without questioning their own choices. So, they develop a dual strategy: admire in secret, criticize in public. This allows them to maintain their position in the group while satisfying their curiosity about alternative paths. This dynamic creates a confusing situation for those who are the object of this hidden envy. You might perceive contradictory signals: people who seem interested in your ideas but publicly criticize them, people who ask detailed questions about your projects in private but ridicule them when others are present. The herd's envy isn't simple and direct envy. It's an envy that mixes with fear, admiration, and self-recrimination. They envy your freedom, but fear paying the price for it. They admire your courage, but feel guilty for not having the same. They'd like to have your achievements, but don't want to make the necessary sacrifices. Within the herd, there are also those Jung would call transitional people. Individuals who secretly sympathize with the free spirit, but haven't yet found the courage to break from the group. They live in constant tension between conformity and authenticity. This hidden envy makes betrayal even more painful because you can sense that there's something genuine in the relationship. And there is, but this genuine something is in constant conflict with group pressures and each individual's personal insecurities. The result is that you constantly receive double messages: private support and public sabotage, secret interest and apparent contempt. This inconsistency isn't collective schizophrenia. It's the natural manifestation of people who want to be like you, but can't admit it even to themselves. One of the most common strategies the herd uses to deal with members who stand out is leveling down. Instead of raising the general standard of the group, they prefer to pull exceptional members back to the average level. This strategy maintains group cohesion without requiring effort from anyone. Leveling down manifests through various subtle tactics. When you share an achievement, they minimize its importance or attribute it to external factors. When you demonstrate knowledge, they question its validity or relevance. When you show ambition, they classify it as naivety or arrogance. These tactics have a clear objective: make you doubt yourself and reduce your aspirations to the level the group considers safe. The herd doesn't want you to fail completely. That would be too obvious and might generate guilt. They want you to be successful within the limits they've defined as acceptable. The process works like a social thermostat. When your success temperature rises too much, the system activates mechanisms to cool it down. When it drops too much, they might even offer some encouragement, but only until you return to the collective comfort zone. This dynamic is especially cruel because it disguises itself as care and concern. The people who pull you down say they're protecting you from disappointments, helping you be more realistic, or preventing you from getting hurt. They sell mediocrity as wisdom and limitation as protection. The result is that many promising people end up internalizing these limitations. They start believing their dreams really are too big, that their ambitions are inappropriate, and that it's better to settle for less. The herd gets what it wanted. Another member who won't threaten the group's balance. But the cost of this conformity is immense. Talents are wasted, potentials are suffocated, and society as a whole loses innovations and advances that could benefit everyone. Leveling down doesn't protect anyone. It just perpetuates collective mediocrity. For those who resist this pressure, the price is high. You need to be willing to be misunderstood, criticized, and eventually excluded. But for those who give in, the price is even higher. You lose yourself in the process. When leveling down doesn't work, when the person continues to stand out despite subtle pressures, the herd escalates its tactics. The next stage is active exclusion, a set of social punishments designed to teach a clear lesson: conformity or loneliness. Exclusion starts subtly: invitations that stop coming, conversations that are interrupted when you approach, jokes that target you. The group develops a nonverbal language that clearly communicates its disapproval, even without direct words. As resistance continues, tactics intensify. Ridicule becomes more open and systematic. Your ideas are disqualified before they're even fully presented. Your achievements are reinterpreted as luck, connections, or special circumstances. Anything except personal merit. Social isolation is one of the most powerful tools in the herd's arsenal. Humans are naturally social animals, and the threat of being alone can be enough to make many people abandon their authentic paths. The herd knows this, and uses this biological need as a control lever. Defamation is another common mechanism. Stories are invented or distorted to paint the different person as problematic, arrogant, or dangerous. These rumors spread quickly within the group, creating a narrative that justifies exclusion. It's not that we're cruel, it's that she's impossible to deal with. We see this today on social media, where people are cancelled for expressing opinions that challenge established narratives. The mechanism is old, but the tools are new. These punishments aren't applied out of sadism, but out of systemic necessity. The herd needs to demonstrate to all its members that deviation has serious consequences. Each person who is punished for being different serves as an example to others. See what happens when you try to be special. The ultimate goal of these punishments isn't to completely destroy the different person, but to create an example that keeps everyone else in line. It's a form of collective psychological terrorism, where the sacrifice of some serves to control all others. For many people, this system works perfectly. They observe what happens to those who dare to be different, and decide that conformity is a small price to pay for social acceptance. The herd maintains its cohesion through fear of the consequences of individuality. But for some people, these punishments have the opposite effect. Instead of intimidating them, they confirm they're on the right path. After all, if the herd is fighting so hard against something, maybe that something is worth it. The herd's reaction to different people reveals something deep about human nature: fear of the unknown and resistance to change. Nietzsche observed that the herd can't genuinely understand those who think or act differently, so it prefers to categorize them in ways that protect its own worldview. When confronted with someone who challenges its norms, the herd resorts to simplifying labels. The different person is crazy, arrogant, irresponsible, or dangerous. These labels serve a dual purpose. They eliminate the need to truly understand the difference and justify negative treatment. The madness label is especially convenient because it allows the herd to dismiss any idea or behavior it doesn't understand. If someone sees possibilities others don't see, has ambitions others consider impossible, or questions truths others consider absolute, it's easier to call them crazy than admit there might be valid perspectives beyond their own. The accusation of arrogance is another common tool. Any demonstration of confidence, ambition, or authenticity can be reinterpreted as undue superiority. The herd equates humility with virtue, but what they really defend isn't humility. It's false modesty that keeps everyone at the same low level. These categorizations create a closed system of thought where any exception is automatically pathologized or demonized. The herd doesn't need to question its own limits, because any evidence that alternatives exist is dismissed as aberration. This fear of difference manifests at all levels of society. Companies that punish employees who are too innovative, schools that discourage students who ask difficult questions, families that criticize members who want more from life. Difference is seen as threat, not opportunity. The result is a society that systematically wastes its creative and innovative potential. Talents are suffocated at birth because they represent a challenge to established mediocrity. Fear of difference becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. By rejecting the different, the herd ensures it will remain mediocre. To fully understand the dynamic Nietzsche described, it's useful to look at historical examples of people who were rejected in life, but recognized after death. History is full of individuals who were misunderstood, persecuted, or ignored by their contemporaries, only to be celebrated by later generations. Socrates was considered a corrupter of youth and sentenced to death for questioning the established truths of his time. His crime wasn't teaching lies, but teaching people to think for themselves, something the Athenian establishment found intolerable. Jesus Christ was rejected by many of his time, including religious and political authorities. His message of love and personal transformation threatened established power structures. He was crucified as a common criminal, but his influence spread throughout the entire world. Nietzsche himself experienced this rejection firsthand. During his productive life, his books sold very little, and he was largely ignored by the academic world. His radical philosophy was considered too dangerous for the bourgeois sensibility of his time. Van Gogh sold only one painting during his entire life and died in poverty, considered a failure by his contemporaries. Today, his works are among the most valued in the art world. Tesla was ridiculed by many of his fellow scientists when he proposed ideas that were decades ahead of their time. He died alone and bankrupt, but his inventions transformed the modern world. In more recent times, we see the same dynamic. Steve Jobs was expelled from the very company he founded because his ideas were considered too radical. Jeff Bezos was ridiculed for leaving Wall Street to sell books online. These examples aren't exceptions, they're the rule. History consistently shows that truly innovative and authentic people face resistance from their contemporaries. The herd of each era has difficulty recognizing the value of what's genuinely new or different. This dynamic reveals something important about the nature of social recognition. It usually comes too late to benefit those who deserve it. The herd can only accept difference when it's already been validated by time and distance, when it no longer represents a direct threat to the status quo. Within the herd dynamic exists a particularly cruel phenomenon: the false friend. This is the person who shows support and admiration when convenient, but abandons or betrays when true loyalty is tested. Nietzsche observed that this type of betrayal is especially common and painful. The herd's false friend is someone who benefits from association with a different or talented person, but isn't willing to pay the social price of that association when things get difficult. They praise in private, but remain silent in public. They celebrate small successes, but sabotage big possibilities. This person can seem genuinely supportive for long periods. They might offer encouragement, advice, and even practical help, but their support is always conditional, conditioned on maintaining their own position within the herd. When the authentic person starts standing out too much, when their ideas become too radical, or when their difference becomes too obvious, the false friend needs to make a choice: remain loyal and risk their own social position, or betray and maintain their safety within the group. Most of the time, the choice is clear. The false friend abandons those they considered friends to preserve their own social acceptance. This betrayal is particularly painful because it comes from someone you trusted, someone who seemed to understand and value authenticity. The betrayal can be active or passive. Active when the person actively criticizes or sabotages those they once supported. Passive when they simply pull away. stop offering support, and allow others to do the dirty work of exclusion. The false friend justifies their betrayal in various ways. They might say the person changed, that they're not the same as before, or that they lost their humility. These justifications serve to relieve their own guilt and maintain their image as a good and reasonable person. But the truth is simpler. The false friend was never really a friend. They were a freeloader of authenticity, someone who fed off the energy and ideas of the different person, but wasn't willing to defend the values they claimed to admire when it became inconvenient. This dynamic teaches a valuable lesson about authentic relationships. They're rare and precious. Most social connections are based on convenience, not genuine affinity. Discovering this can be painful, but also liberating. For those who choose the path of authenticity and value creation, there's a destiny Nietzsche knew well: isolation. The true philosopher, artist, or visionary needs to be willing to walk alone, at least for long periods of their journey. This isolation isn't accidental, it's structural. When you decide to create something genuinely new, question deep foundations, or explore uncharted territories of human thought and experience, you inevitably move away from the beaten paths where most people walk. The value creator works in a different dimension of reality. While the herd occupies itself with immediate practical questions and known solutions, the creator explores possibilities that don't yet exist. This difference in focus creates a natural distance between them and the people around them. This distance isn't just intellectual, it's existential. The creator experiences life in a fundamentally different way. They question what others accept, see potential where others see limitation, and imagine futures others consider impossible. This difference in perspective makes communication with the herd increasingly difficult. Schopenhauer wrote extensively about the need for solitude for intellectual development. For him, genius needs isolation not out of misanthropy, but out of creative necessity. The best ideas arise in silence, away from the noise of others' opinions. The creator's isolation is intensified by the fact that their work is usually not understood until much later. They work for an audience that doesn't yet exist, create solutions for problems not yet recognized, and develop ideas that will only make sense to future generations. This situation requires a special kind of courage, the courage to continue working without external validation, to maintain confidence in your vision even when everyone around questions your sanity, to persevere in projects that may never be recognized in your lifetime. Isolation isn't just the consequence of creative work, it's also a necessary condition for it. The creator needs silence and solitude to hear their own inner voice, to develop their ideas without interference, and to keep their vision pure without contamination from external opinions. Many creators discover that their most productive periods coincide with their periods of greatest social isolation. Away from the conformist pressures of the herd, they can freely explore the limits of their imagination and develop truly original works. But this isolation exacts a high emotional price. Humans are naturally social, and prolonged loneliness can be devastating to mental and emotional health. The creator needs to find ways to maintain their sanity and motivation, even when walking alone. The journey of authenticity has a cost that needs to be recognized and accepted before it's begun. Nietzsche was honest about this price. Being true to yourself means being willing to face loneliness, criticism, misunderstanding, and frequently, open hostility. The price of authenticity begins with the end of many superficial relationships. When you stop pretending to be who you're not, when you stop agreeing with things you don't believe in, and when you stop participating in activities that don't make sense to you, many people simply pull away. They prefer the company of someone predictable and conformist. Constant criticism is another aspect of this price. Authentic people are natural targets for criticism because they stand out, because they make different choices, and because simply by existing, they question everyone else's choices. Being criticized becomes a daily experience, and not all criticism is fair or constructive. Misunderstanding is perhaps the most frustrating aspect of the price of authenticity. You can try to explain your motivations, your visions, and your projects, but you'll frequently discover that people simply can't comprehend what you're trying to communicate. They hear your words through the filters of their own limitations. Hostility can be the most difficult aspect to bear. Some people don't just disagree with you, they actively work against your interests, spread malicious rumors about you, and try to sabotage your projects. This hostility can come from unexpected places, including people you considered friends or allies. Social isolation is an almost inevitable consequence of authenticity. As you become more genuine, the number of people you can relate to deeply decreases dramatically. Most people prefer superficial and predictable relationships, not the depth and unpredictability that comes with authenticity. Financial uncertainty is another common price. Authentic people frequently choose careers that reflect their values instead of just maximizing profits. They might reject lucrative opportunities that don't align with their vision, or might invest time in projects that don't have immediate financial return. Constant self-questioning is also part of the price. When you don't have the automatic support of the herd, you need constant certainty that you're on the right path. This requires a level of self-reflection and self-confidence that can be exhausting to maintain. But perhaps the most paradoxical aspect of the price of authenticity is that even being high, it's infinitely less than the price of inauthenticity, the complete loss of yourself. There is, however, a revolutionary perspective on this entire dynamic of betrayal and rejection. Nietzsche suggested that the herd's betrayal, as painful as it may be, can be reinterpreted as a sign of liberation, a confirmation that you're finally on the right path. When the herd rejects you, it means you've managed to free yourself from their limitations. Betrayal is painful, but it's also proof that you're no longer a prisoner of the expectations and standards that keep most people in a life of planned mediocrity. This rejection functions as a test of authenticity. If your ideas, ambitions, and life choices can be easily accepted by the herd, maybe they're not as original or transformative as you thought. The resistance you encounter is proportional to the originality of what you're offering. Betrayal also offers a valuable opportunity for self-discovery. When people you thought knew you reject you, you're forced to question who you really are, independent of external perceptions and expectations. This is a painful but essential journey for developing genuine individuality. The herd's abandonment creates space for more authentic relationships. When you stop trying to please everyone, you can finally attract people who value you for what you really are, not for what you pretend to be. These relationships are rare, but they're infinitely more satisfying than superficial connections based on conformity. Rejection also develops your inner strength. Every wave of criticism you survive, every episode of isolation you endure, every betrayal you overcome, contributes to developing emotional resilience that becomes your greatest competitive advantage. When you learn to derive your validation from internal sources instead of external approval, you become truly free. The herd's opinion loses its power over your decisions, and you can finally pursue your goals without constantly worrying about social approval. The herd's betrayal can be seen as a rite of passage, a painful but necessary ceremony that marks your transition from group member to autonomous individual. It's the entry fee for a life of genuine freedom. This perspective doesn't minimize the pain of betrayal or rejection. It simply offers a framework for understanding these experiences as part of a larger process of personal development and liberation. Betrayal isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of a new story, a story you write for yourself. To not just survive, but thrive after the herd's betrayal, it's necessary to develop a special kind of inner strength, what Nietzsche called the strength of solitude. This isn't just the ability to be alone, but to find in solitude a source of power and creativity. Inner strength begins with accepting a fundamental truth. You came into this world alone, and you'll leave it alone. All social connections, however meaningful they may be, are temporary. The only relationship that will last your entire life is the relationship you have with yourself. This acceptance isn't pessimistic, it's liberating. When you understand that your completeness doesn't depend on others' approval or presence, you stop wasting energy trying to control the uncontrollable. You can invest this energy in your own development and in projects that truly matter to you. Inner strength also requires developing an internal validation system. Instead of depending on praise, approval, or external recognition, You learn to evaluate your own progress based on criteria you establish yourself. This doesn't mean arrogance, it means autonomy. This emotional autonomy is built through deliberate practice. Every time you resist the temptation to modify your opinions to please others, every time you maintain your convictions despite social pressure, every time you choose authenticity over acceptance, you strengthen your emotional independence. Solitude becomes productive when you learn to use it as a tool for self-knowledge and development. Instead of running from it or filling it with distractions, you can embrace it as an opportunity for deep reflection, creativity, and planning. Many of humanity's greatest advances arose from minds that knew how to find in solitude a laboratory for innovation. Solitude offers complete freedom to explore ideas without judgment, experiment with possibilities without embarrassment, and develop visions without external interference. Inner strength also manifests in the ability to maintain hope and purpose, even when there's no external validation. This requires faith, not necessarily religious faith, but faith in yourself and your possibilities. It's confidence that your work has value, even if others don't recognize it yet. This strength isn't conquered all at once. It's developed gradually through small daily victories over the need for external approval. It's an emotional muscle that strengthens with use and atrophies with neglect. Understanding this entire dynamic, Nietzsche made a call that resonates through the centuries. A radical invitation to abandon the desperate search for social acceptance and instead focus on creating yourself as a work of art. This call isn't for everyone, but for those who feel they were born for something greater than conformity. Nietzsche's call is essentially a declaration of personal independence. It's the recognition that you don't need anyone's permission to be who you really are, to pursue your most ambitious dreams, or to question truths others consider unquestionable. This call requires you to abandon the victim mentality. Instead of complaining about how the world doesn't understand you or how people betray you, you accept total responsibility for your own life. You stop waiting for others to change to accommodate you and start changing yourself to create the life you want. Creating yourself as a life project means treating your existence as a work of art in constant development. You become simultaneously the artist and the work of art, constantly refining, experimenting, and evolving. Your experiences become raw material for your own development. This implies taking authority over your own values. Instead of passively accepting values imposed by family, society, or tradition, you examine each belief, question each assumption, and keep only what truly resonates with your experience and personal vision. Jung described this process as the journey of individuation, the development of individual personality separate from the collective psyche. For him, this was the greatest psychological task of any human life. The process of self-creation is permanent. There's no endpoint where you can say, "Now I'm complete." Each day offers opportunities for refinement, growth, and transformation. You never stop becoming who you're destined to be. This call also implies accepting total responsibility for the results of your choices. When you stop seeking external approval, you also stop being able to blame others for your failures. You become completely responsible for your own happiness, success, and fulfillment. Nietzsche's invitation isn't for complete isolation, but for relationships based on mutual authenticity instead of neurotic need. When you don't desperately need approval, you can connect with others from a position of strength, not lack. This is a call for courage, the courage to live without a social safety net, to bet on your own vision even when others consider it impossible, to build a life that makes sense to you even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. It's fundamentally a call for freedom, not political or social freedom, but the deepest existential freedom, the freedom to be authentically yourself, regardless of social consequences. Nietzsche's final message about the herd's betrayal isn't one of despair, but of radical empowerment. The herd will always betray those who dare to be different. This isn't a bug in the system, it's a feature. But this betrayal isn't a condemnation, it's liberation in disguise. When you understand that betrayal is inevitable, you stop wasting energy trying to avoid it. You stop trying to be accepted by people who fundamentally can't accept who you really are. This understanding frees up an enormous amount of energy that can be redirected to genuinely important projects. The herd's betrayal is in fact proof that you weren't born to be just another follower in the crowd. It's evidence that there's something special about you, something that bothers the mediocrity around you, something that questions the status quo by your mere existence. Nietzsche invites us to completely reinterpret our relationship with social rejection. Instead of seeing it as personal failure, we can see it as confirmation of our originality. Instead of internalizing it as low self-esteem, we can use it as fuel for greater authenticity. The herd doesn't betray you because you're inferior. It betrays because you're superior to what they can understand or accept. Your difference confronts them with their own self-imposed limitations, and this is intolerable for them. Betrayal is the only way they find to deal with this confrontation. This perspective completely transforms the experience of being rejected. Instead of feeling diminished by betrayal, you can feel confirmed by it. Every person who abandons you for being authentic proves you're on the right path. The real tragedy isn't being betrayed by the herd, it's being accepted by it. Being accepted by the herd means you've conformed enough to no longer represent a threat to mediocrity. It means you've given up your individuality in exchange for approval that, in the end, is worth nothing. The goal shouldn't be to convince the herd of your value, but to completely overcome the need for that validation. When you develop enough inner strength to value your own opinion above the masses' opinion, you conquer a freedom few experience. Nietzsche reminds us that humanity's true pioneers were always rejected by their contemporaries. They didn't change the world despite rejection. They changed it because they had the courage to continue despite it. Betrayal isn't an obstacle on the path to greatness, it's an integral part of it. The choice is always before you. Seek the herd's acceptance and live a life of mediocre conformity, or accept your difference and create something truly your own. Betrayal is inevitable, but greatness is also possible, as long as you have enough courage to pay its price. And now you have a choice to make. Will you continue trying to fit into a world that was never made for you? Or will you have the courage to create your own path? The herd's betrayal isn't your end, it's your beginning. If this content touched something inside you, if you recognized your own journey in these words of Nietzsche, you're not alone in this walk. There are others like you, others who chose authenticity despite the price. Subscribe to the channel to continue exploring these ideas that can transform your worldview. And leave your like if you had the courage to make it this far. This shows you're not part of the herd that gives up halfway through. Your journey of liberation is just beginning.